Okay, cool. Want to take another one? Okay. Right. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Thank you for coming. I'm going to make it relatively short because I know you guys want to chit-chat and talk with everybody and have a beer and everything, and it's 7, so... I'm going to be talking about DAOs in gno.land. Now, just a quick introduction. My name is Leon, or in Serbian, Lav. I'm a DevRel engineer at gno.land, and I've been in Web3 for about 3.5 years. This is my GitHub. If anybody wants to check it out, please do. Why? Because everything we do open source, so all of my work and all of our work can be found online. And today's agenda is going to be relatively short again. It's going to be a little bit about what gno.land is, just so I can give you a bit of a context of why we exist, what we're trying to do. I'm going to talk about why Go, and you'll realize why I'm telling you this in a second. Then why GNO, which is our language, and then about DAOs. The first three are going to be relatively easy and simple, so I'm not going to spend too much time. We're going to focus on the DAOs afterwards. Okay, cool. So gno.land. gno.land is a new blockchain. It's running a custom virtual machine called the GNO VM. And basically what it does is it allows us to write smart contracts in GNO. GNO is an interpreted and deterministic version of Go. Now, before I go on, can you guys raise your hands if you're developers at all? Okay. How many of you have heard of Go? Okay. And how many of you have written anything in Go so far? Okay, that's a decent amount. Nice. Cool. And then finally, the last point that's really important for gno.land is that all deployed code, so anything you deploy to the chain, is essentially completely transparent and viewable via this thing we built called GNOWeb. As you know or may not know, in Ethereum and usually in other blockchain systems, what you need to do after writing a smart contract is you also need to write a front end somehow. You don't need to do it, but realistically speaking, if you want your app to be used, you kind of want to build a front end. And that can kind of be painful sometimes because you have to handle all these clients and all these libraries. You have to write JavaScript, and all in all, it's not a really fun experience. And GNOWeb is basically a universal front end. GNOWeb allows you to, if you know Go, and if you know Markdown, I guess everybody here knows Markdown. Yes. Okay. I hope. Basically allows you to just write a smart contract and then write a markdown version of its render, so to say. So you can take the state out, whatever is happening in your smart contract, and then you can just parse it into Markdown and return it. And GNOWeb will be this universal front end that you can just basically browse the blockchain within it. Yeah, that's a super important topic because we really care about transparency, and you'll see later why. Okay, so why Go? This is the slide. Why Go? Go, again, is super simple and straightforward as a language. It was built way back, like 2009, I think. And anybody who knows at least a little bit about coding can probably get a lot about Go. Go is a very straightforward, very minimalistic language. And it has a very large developer community. It has a lot of readily available resources. So again, it's been 16 years, right, since it came out. So there's a lot of things that can be reused, especially for GNO, because GNO is essentially identical to Go, except a few minor things. So GNO is a subset of Go. It has a solid collection of very performant and very well-known standard libraries, so you don't have to learn about these new standards and libraries you have to import and this and that. You just know that you can do strings dot whatever, or string conversion dot whatever, etc. But it's super simple, and that's why we chose Go. Go is a straightforward language that we really like writing, and that was the basis for our project, essentially. It gives lots of power to developers because it was based on C, essentially. It's a better version of C, so to say. But it's still very simple. Okay. So a little bit about GNO, just short. It's modeled after Go 118. The newest one is 123, I believe. So we're a little bit behind. We don't have everything in the language, but basically it's interpreted instead of compiled. And that basically allows seamless composability on-chain, and you'll realize in a bit what I'm talking about. And currently does not support, again, as I said, all Go features, such as generics and Go routines for anybody who knows what those are. But that's really not really too important. This is GNO. I mean, I think you guys can pretty much understand what's going on here. just like in Solidity, you have a top-level variable at top left, which is just an int, and you can set it and get it. But the really cool thing is that once Alice deploys this to the blockchain, it lives on a specific package path. It's like an address, let's say. But this is more human readable in some sense. So imagine like you have an ENS for your smart contract, but by default. Then what Bob can do, and this is not something that you can directly do in Ethereum, is you can literally import the package from the chain itself. So you don't have to download everything that you want to use in your smart contract and then compile it locally and then publish the bytecode, which essentially then you have copies of this piece of code that you're reusing, that everybody's reusing, like for example, the ERC20. Every smart contract that reuses the ERC20 code has a bytecode version of it somewhere packed inside, and it's kind of it's populating more memory. It's redundant, right? In this case, you literally import Alice and you get it from the chain after execution or during execution. So Bob can just import Alice's contract, and then he can get a public function. Public functions in Go are just with the first letter capital, so it's exported. It's like a public one. And then basically you can get the X, and then you can set the X. Perfect. Okay, it's super, super simple. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of like what GNO is, so you kind of catch the context, right? Okay, so let's move on to DAOs. Okay, so why the hell do we make DAOs? Can anybody tell me? Okay, let me move back. Does anybody want to tell me why did we create DAOs? Like why are they nice? Why do we want them? Anybody? Okay.
Because of regulation.
Because of regulation? What do you mean regulation? Okay, sure, never mind. Okay, so basically the centralized governance structures can fail, right? I mean, in the end, DAOs are an alternative. Centralized governance, the traditional governance, whatever you want to call it, it works sometimes it doesn't. And people said, okay, well, if we can build something new, if we can build something different, why not try to do it? And for example, you can take very, very specific cases that are happening currently in the world, like here or like in America. For example, people think that decentralized systems should provide resilience. They should provide a lot of transparency, and they should be adaptable. They should be able to change. For example, I think we've been locked in this state in Serbia specifically for 12 years, right? And it's not good, right? That's why people started building DAOs. This is a very brief context intro to why DAOs. But yes, essentially, maybe DAOs currently lack the efficiency of centralized systems, right? As we talked in the previous presentation as well. They do provide a framework to, over time, reach the levels of efficiency that the centralized governance systems do have, but also have more features, they're better in some way, right? They're more accessible, they're more easy to monitor, to be transparent, for them to be transparent, etc. But yeah, so essentially the philosophy of governance that we have is that governance should be adaptable. That's what I mentioned previously. So it should be able to change, should be able to be upgraded, it should be able to be trashed and completely rebuilt. It should also be inclusive, unless you get what's going on Twitter, for example, right now. You want to welcome all kinds of voices, and if not, then you make an adaptable system that can fork. You say, okay, well, we have one system that works one way, but all of a sudden we have these two big groups that don't really want to work together. So, okay, let's make the system super easy to fork, and then they can have their own separate worlds and do whatever you want, right? That's what happened with the Schism as well, right? Again, then they need to be built for sustainability. So they do need to have some sort of way to be stable in the long term, and also be transparent. So we actually know what's going on and not repeat the same mistake, right? Which is a general blockchain philosophy, of course, but that's fine. And then in the end, we think that they should be customizable. And again, that's a bit different than adaptable, because adaptable allows DAOs to evolve, while customizable means from the start you can make different types of DAOs. You can make a DAO that's completely flat. You can make a DAO that's that has some sort of hierarchy. You can make a DAO that, I don't know, is tiered. And we'll see a bit about that in a sec. So these are the 3 DAOs that we are working in gno.land, that we're working on in gno.land. And more to come, obviously. But I'm going to just give you a brief overview of what these are and how they work. And maybe we're wrong about them, and we want you to tell us about it. Because this is all a big experiment for us, for everybody, realistically speaking. But okay, so let's start. Basically, GovDAO, it's governance DAO, obviously. This is a DAO that essentially, going back to the whole thing, we're making a chain. GovDAO is a governance system that comes baked in with the chain. So anybody who also forks the chain will also get a version of GovDAO. It decentralizes the responsibility of managing the chain over time. So for example, you can manage essentially anything at this point in time. We had proposals for new validators, proposals for budgets, proposals for this, for that. It really doesn't matter, but it's related to the chain. So you talk to the people running the chain, essentially. Then we have a common DAO. This is a name we came up. It's a common DAO because it's common. So we want anybody to be able to make a common DAO very easily. And it's a general purpose framework that I'll show you in a little bit. And we have gno.land, and this is, again, another use case specific DAO. It's specifically used for content management and ecosystem development in the sense that we have a platform called gno.land, and we do need a DAO to manage it, but we realized that having one big flat DAO isn't really going to make it, isn't really going to do the job that we want. So we're creating, for example, something like a DAO of DAOs, for example. And I'll talk about it in a bit. Okay, so to go over the specific ones now, governance baked into the chain is what GovDAO is. And in this case, it's an invite system. So we don't really have a token. The idea with GovDAO is that you basically earn your place through your own reputation. And going back to how do you get a reputation? Where do you get the reputation, right? We go back to this point of being open source. So anything we do, so the chain itself, anything on the chain is open source. So publishing any kind of code must be open source. It's like that by default. But also anything that we do for the chain, for the tech, for the whole tech stack, from the bottom layer all the way to the app layer, everything is open source. So you can just go to GitHub and check out exactly what I did today in my work hours if you want to, which is kind of scary, honestly, but it's okay. We're prepared for that. And then basically we have this whole tiering system. So we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And this is a very opinionated, obviously, way of doing a DAO. Tier 1 has the biggest power, the biggest voting power in the whole DAO. And they can invite a tier 2. So basically you move up the ranks to somewhere. So this is kind of an I'm not sure how to say that in English, never mind. But essentially you have tier 1 with the most voting power, tier 2 with a little bit less, and then tier 3 for the general population. So it's reputation based, and essentially tier 2 can invite tier 3, and tier 3 would be people who just kind of start getting involved, and at one point you building up on your reputation by contributing to the project, by either on GitHub, either on the chain, whatever you want, and being noticed by the governance. You essentially gain the permission to, not permission, you gain the opportunity to be invited, right? And again, there are no tokens involved in this case. Then, maybe the only tokens that will be involved are, for example, remuneration down the line for participating in DAO, which is, I think, one of the most important things when you want to actually have a DAO be active, right? Okay. Let's move on. So gno.land. So again, this is a organizational framework, but also an implementation where we have a management platform. We have a content management platform, and we kind of want to make it into something that's DAO managed. And the thing that we're trying to do is make a tree-based DAO, like a DAO of DAOs. And the idea is that you want to kind of create a DAO for each subsection of this whole platform. So in the case of, say, we want to be able to publish tutorials about how to do something on GNO. We want the team who's in the main DAO, so whoever the people are, and realistically speaking, right now it's us, right? It's the core team. But as far as we open up the DAO more and more, or as we open up the DAO more and more, we'll get more people in. And for example, be able to create a smaller DAO, which is going to be specifically for marketing, or specifically for event management, or specifically for this. So basically, in some sense, you're kind of making a company. but it's based on DAOs, right? So this is going back to the initial premise that DAOs aren't only supposed to be flat, in our opinion. We should be able to create different types of structures and see how they work. So in this case, you create sub-DAOs to create more structure and remove overhead, time overhead, for example, for if you have one big DAO, you can kind of partition the proposals by type or by this or by that, but in the end they go through the same pipeline. Well, in this case, you can say, okay, well, I want to make an event, and I'm in event DAO, but for this I need approval from marketing DAO, and I need approval from the higher up DAO that handles the budget, right? So for the budget DAO, whatever. And then you can say, okay, well, I can make a proposal in my DAO that I can programmatically list to invite the DAOs and propose to them as well that what I'm doing is supposed to be approved. Or for example, you can automatically essentially say, I propose this, and then because the topic is this and this, you'll automatically push proposals to other DAOs. Or for example, in the end, if you only want the higher DAO to be able to say yes or no, you can push proposals between the smaller DAOs, and then in the end, you have to say, I need a sign off on this from the big DAO. Yeah.
Ask you just one thing. Can
Yes?
you programmatically do something like two sub-DAOs want to finance some program? Like one sub-DAO want to pay 10K, the other 10K for the same thing. So is there a way that if the vote passed, you also programmatically have that both sub-DAOs can somehow fund the same thing?
Yeah, you could probably do that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you just repeat the question again?
So let's imagine I'm organizing event,
Yeah.
cost me 10K,
Yeah.
but like marketing team budget is willing to pay 5, the DAO ops team want to pay 5.
Yeah.
So if we pass the proposal,
Yeah.
we would like to automatically from treasury of sub-DAO A and treasury of sub-DAO B to allocate 5K and pay to the some others.
Yeah,
So
for
basically,
sure.
like
Why
all
not?
these steps
Yeah, definitely.
After the vote and the okay.
Yeah. I mean, part of this is that realistically speaking, everything that's happening isn't only on chain, right? In the end, you communicate with people you know. So if you know somebody from this DAO and from this DAO, you can say, hey, can you put in a proposal for me? It's also fine, right? But yeah, that's very possible. And then Common DAO, which I'll give you a bit about, I'll give you a bit of code to actually showcase what this is about, is it's a modular governance framework. Again, it's very opinionated, but the idea is that anybody who writes any sort of application can literally import a package that's on-chain. So you can just import a package and you can do DAO.new and you'll get a DAO all of a sudden. This is used in gno.land's Boards app. So a Boards app is kind of our flagship application. It's a Reddit-like forum app. It's basically an app where you can, it's a decentralized social media app, right? To a degree. But the only thing is that, so you have the main app, which has the ability to create boards, like subreddits. And then in each board, you actually get a DAO by default. And then based on the different people that are in, you can create a DAO for, for Ethereum, a DAO for gno.land, a DAO for this, a DAO for each topic that's going on. And they can do the moderation they want. And then down the line, because this is using Common DAO, which is the framework, you can actually have a subreddit or a board, right, which then can create a sub-DAO of its sub-DAO, which is going to handle the content management and then the whatever else. So you can go all the way down if you want. But the logic is this. So look, this is a very simple snippet of code. This is an app that I wrote. This is not the full app, obviously. This is like the DAO part of the app. So I have a package, and a package is an organizational unit of code in Go. So it's like you can make as many files as you want, but they're within the same package. So it's like you put them in one big file. It's going to be the same. Essentially, the logic is this is a social media application. It's like super simple. It like handles posting and removing posts and deleting posts. But I want to create a DAO that's going to be able to remove posts to moderate it, basically, right? So the logic is this. We have some imports, and the std import is just a standard library for GNO, which you don't really need to know about, but these two are very important. So here we have an import path. So this is actually where the code lives. So actually, if you like Google this, you'll get the Common DAO, the Common DAO source code. So the logic is, okay, well, this is a pure package. It means it's literally just functionality, so that we don't have any state. And we're importing all the things that we need. So for example, the definitions of structs, of the functions of everything. But we also import this R, which is a Common DAO. And this is the factory. So R is basically short for realms. And realms are essentially stateful applications, right? So they're smart contracts, as you would know. And then what you can do is you can say, hey, factory, can I make a new DAO? And then it's going to give you this object. And I have the object somewhere here. This is the object. So it has a couple of things here, but it's relatively simple. It has an ID, it has a slug. Does anybody know what a slug is? Yeah? Okay, a slug is essentially when you browse the internet, you create subfolders and sub-items on your page. And a slug is the string that identifies it, essentially. It's like an ID. Then you have a name, you have a parent. So this is the really cool thing, is that you can do recursive definitions in GNO, which is it's a function of Go, essentially, so it's inherited. And the idea is that you can make a DAO that has a parent, that has a parent, that has a parent, and then you do whatever you want. And then you can split them up, and you can connect them in different ways as well. Now, it doesn't have to be necessarily a parent, even. Okay, then you have an address set. This is a simple set. It's a simple package that we have that doesn't allow duplicates in the set. And then we have this ID generator, nothing special. And then we have these two trees, and these are like maps, right? Like maps in mapping and Solidity. So you basically take the proposal ID and you give it the proposal, and then you do the same thing for the proposal, except this one is the one. These ones are the ones that are finished. They have been voted on already. And this is basically what a DAO is in practice. It's relatively simple. But going back to this, so what I do is I create this, and I get this object, and it's exported, and that's really important. And I'll try to explain to you why. Essentially, the logic is that, does anybody know what happens if you make a variable in Solidity public? Like,
it gets a getter?
It exposes a getter automatically, yes. So basically, when you make it public, you have in the ABI, you get a getter for that specific variable automatically, right? The logic with GNO is that you do that for, as I said, any struct. You can also define methods on the struct. And this is a feature of Go, essentially, where you can basically define a bunch of features, a bunch of methods in the package that's going to be reused. And then once you export it, you automatically get all of these functions by default. So that's why you can actually just import this. And this is like what, not even 50 lines of code, right? This is like 20 lines of code. You import this and you make this, and you automatically expose a DAO to your application. This, for example, is a very specific because I'm the owner of this application, so I'll add myself because why not? And then these are the two other things that we kind of need to do. In this case, we need to define a proposal. So this is a definition of a proposal. I want to create a proposal. I want my DAO to be able to create a proposal to remove a post. And this is what I was talking about methods. So this is a method on top of this object, right? On top of this struct. So when this type of proposal is executed, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the posts, that is a state variable somewhere that contains all these posts, and it's just going to remove the post that was proposed in the proposal, right? And then in this case, what I also do is you make a function that can be called from the outside world. Anything that's exported is essentially public, right? So you can just call it. And then we get the caller, and the caller puts in the ID of the post and the reason why he wants it deleted, why they want it deleted. And then you do DAO.propose, you give it the caller, you give it the definition of the proposal, and then you error. And then everything else happens automatically. You have a page with the DAO where the DAO says, okay, this is a new proposal, it popped up, you can vote on it. You can also, there's a couple of other things obviously here, like you have to define the quorum, you have to define the voting period, et cetera, but this is the gist, right? And this isn't too complicated. I mean, does everybody understand more or less what's happening here? Okay, cool. Right? This is an experiment. Maybe I'm a bit boring. Maybe this is all a bit boring, but you came to a DAO meetup. But essentially, this is a continuous learning process. Everybody's doing it. Nobody knows really what they're doing. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up my presentation with basically this. DAOs are hard. Creating them involves a lot of organizational skill. You need to know how organizations work because you're making an organization. You need technical expertise to actually write the code that I showed you, and a lot more. You need to have some knowledge of world history, of governance, et cetera, et cetera. DAOs essentially strive to create a better governance in the world. And maybe we wouldn't have problems that we have in the world if we had DAOs functioning. And then in the end, just a small reminder to participate in your DAOs of interest. That's the only way to keep them alive. And don't do it only for the money, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes?
Just a short one. Can
Yeah.
you make infinite loops? Like you have the DAO that has a parent and the
You can
parent
probably
has
do that. You can probably do that. But we'll put some checks in.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a fun, interesting one question.
Yeah.
Simply put is, why do you think DAOs are so autistic, if I may? In the sense of, you have DAOs for a protocol, like Nido DAO votes on what happens on Nido.
Yeah.
But what I would call a non-autistic DAO is, for instance, we had a few pizza DAOs. The job of this DAO was to organize pizza parties.
Yeah.
Or, a DAO that we put funds together and we try to, provide house to the homeless people. Doing something real in the real world using on-chain tooling, essentially.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening? Because it's been, 6-7 years now,
Yeah.
and we've seen close to nothing of those kind of real world doing things now. Why is that so, you think?
I think, one of the biggest problems is we've only recently started making it easy for people to interact with DAOs, right? That's the general problem of blockchain. Blockchains are hard to get into to a degree, especially if you're not a developer. DAOs are not different, in my opinion. They need ways to make them super simple. In the end, like the end goal, I believe, for every blockchain should be for the user that's using whatever app is, whatever the app they're using, they should know that the blockchain is beneath. But you always have this moment of, well, if you don't know what you're doing, then you don't know what a mnemonic is. And then you go back and forth between, well, you need to be sovereign, but then you also don't want to ruin the experience, so to say, right? So I think the final straw in all of that is education, in the end. And it's not only education about blockchains; it's general education about computers in the end, right? Yeah.
Do you think AI and AI agents will improve UX and how we interact with DAOs? Or make it disaster?
So what I saw in the previous presentation was that the Lighter crew created these bots that notify you about DAOs and about stuff that's happening in DAOs. I think that's really, really cool. And I think that that's one of the most important things that we can do for DAOs is make it super, super easy for people to know that something is going on, right? That's a form of education in the end, right? So you, imagine if everybody in the world had a phone that had access to this specific DAO that's important for them, and then you get like a lost person alert, right? Maybe not to that level, obviously, but you get a message, hey, there's something we need your opinion on. And then you also need to kind of educate people on why they should do it, which is, it's a really big problem because why should you vote for whatever, right?
The biggest problem with DAOs is because you need a lot of context.
Yeah, that's true. But in the end, I think that's education and making information easily accessible. That's it. They're super hard. DAOs are super hard. Even from the technical side, even from the non-technical side, it's super, super hard to make them. It took thousands of years to make a proper governance system in the traditional world. So.
Thanks, Lav.
Yeah.